In the quiet dawn of December 16th, 2000, in Tallahassee, Florida, a man named Mike kissed his wife Denise and his baby daughter goodbye. He was heading out for a morning of duck hunting on Lake Seminole, a skilled outdoorsman following a routine he loved. He promised to be home by noon. It was their sixth wedding anniversary, but Mike would never return. What unfolded was a mystery that would linger for 17 years. It began with a hidden lust, spiraled into a conspiracy of murder, and was ultimately unraveled by a force the killers never calculated: a mother's pure, unyielding love. To the outside world, Mike had a perfect life, a successful career, a beautiful family, and a steadfast best friend named Brian Winchester. The two men were inseparable. Their families were intertwined. Brian was even the godfather to Mike's daughter. He was also a life insurance agent, and just 6 months before Mike disappeared, he sold his best friend a new policy, a policy worth $1.7 million. Beneath this picture-perfect surface, however, a dangerous desire was thriving. This is where our story truly begins. Not with murder, but with lust. For years, Brian Winchester and Mike's wife, Denise, had been consumed by a secret affair. What started as a forbidden attraction festered into an obsession. They wanted a future together, but in their religious world of Baptists, divorce was heavily frowned upon. To Denise, the social shame and potential loss of her child were too great a price for desire. So they decided the price wouldn't be theirs to pay. They decided the only way to satisfy their lust was by taking Mike out of the picture, permanently. So on that cold morning, Mike did not go to the lake alone. His best friend Brian offered to come along. They motored out to a remote spot known as Stumpfield. And there, in the gray morning light, Brian shoved Mike overboard. The plan was cold and simple. The heavy waders would pull him under, and Mike's death would then be ruled as a tragic accident. But Mike fought. He ripped off the waders and clung to a tree stump, gasping for life. Seeing his friend survive, Brian made his choice. He reached for his shotgun, leveled it, and he pulled the trigger. Just like that, Mike Williams was murdered by his best friend. Brian buried the body, and the performance began. Denise, the worried wife, mad calls saying her husband had gone missing. A massive 44-day search found only Mike's empty boat. With no body, authorities settled on a theory. Mike drowned, and his body was consumed by alligators. Case closed. Almost everyone accepted this, except for one person, Mike's mother, Cheryl. While lust had motivated the crime, it was love, selfless, persistent, maternal love, that vowed to undo it. Cheryl's intuition screamed that this was wrong. Her doubt hardened into certainty 6 months later when a fisherman found Mike's waders and jacket, completely intact, no alligator marks. This was her proof. Yet with no new evidence, the case went cold. Denise collected the $1 million policy. She married Brian Winchester. They moved into the very house she had shared with Mike. But Cheryl Williams would not stop. Her love for her son became a crusade. She mailed thousands of letters to the governor. She held signs on street corners for years, her face etched with a grief that refused to be quiet. She spent her savings on billboards along Florida highways that pleaded, "What happened to Mike Williams?" She was a one-woman investigation, a force of nature fueled by love, standing directly against the destructive path that lust had carved. For over a decade, the secret held. But the foundation of a relationship built on lust and murder is fragile. The Bonnie and Clyde fantasy curdled into distrust and resentment. Their marriage fell apart. In 2016, when Denise filed for divorce, Brian snapped. In an act of stunning desperation, he hid in the back of Denise's SUV, held her at gunpoint, and demanded she call off the divorce. Fearful for her life, she agreed to not go ahead with the divorce. Relieved, Brian calmed down, got out of the car, and left her to go on with her day. She immediately drove to the police station and filed a case. Brian was arrested. And facing life in prison, Brian Winchester saw only one way out. He offered detectives a deal: total immunity for information on the murder of Mike Williams. In October 2017, investigators followed Brian's directions to a creek bed. There, they finally found the remains of Mike Williams. With Brian's testimony, Denise Williams was arrested. She was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. At trial, the full, ugly truth spilled out. The lust, the plot, the insurance money. Denise was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Brian Winchester, the trigger man, received 20 years, but only for the kidnapping. Thanks to his deal, he was never charged for the murder of his best friend. So, what is the final cost of the lust that began this story? Mike Williams, paid with his life, betrayed and murdered by his closest friend. Brian Winchester, traded his freedom and his soul for a desire that landed him in a prison. Denise Williams, her obsession led her from a family home to a prison cell, her life defined by the crime she conspired to commit. Cheryl Williams, paid with 17 years of grief, anguish, and a relentless fight that consumed her life, all to clean up a tragedy she did not cause. Lust, when left unchecked, can cause a lot of destruction. It consumed Brian and Denise, and in its wake, it left only graves and prison cells. The only force strong enough to confront that destruction was not the law. It was a mother's love. Cheryl Williams fought for the memory of her son, and in the end, her love uncovered the terrible truth that lust had tried to bury.